Olatunji. As Nigeria commemorates Democracy Day, President Bola Tinubu addresses joint session of the National Assembly, says Nigeria not drifting towards a one-party state. A conversation on the state of democracy in Nigeria, 32 years after the annulment of the June 12, 1993 election. My guest tonight is Senator Shehu Sani, author, playwright, human rights activist, and politician. Welcome to Politics Tonight, everyone. Stay with us. Thank you. Let's begin with some political development. President Bola Tinubu has dismissed insinuations in certain quarters that Nigeria is drifting towards a one-party state. At a special joint session of the National Assembly to mark this year's Democracy Day, the president reeled out the achievements of his administration in the last 2 years, just as he confers national honors on deserving Nigerians dead and alive. National Assembly correspondent Chokadisa reports.
President Bola Tinubu arrives the hallowed chambers of the House of Representatives to address a joint sitting of the National Assembly as Nigeria celebrates yet another Democracy Day. President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, sets the ball rolling. He welcomes Mr. President and his entourage into the Parliament. It was also a good opportunity for the 10th Senate to highlight some of its achievements in 2 years. Senator Akpabio calls for the creation of a June 12 museum to archive the memories of Nigeria's most credible election and its aftermath.
Under President Bola Tinubu's leadership, we have seen transformation in his bold approach to build and reform the decayed Nigeria. From unifying the foreign exchange markets to local government autonomy, to the formation of the regional development commissions, to Nigeria's educational loan fund, to removing the fuel subsidies, to attracting foreign investments, to the major issue at stake today, the tax reforms.
In his address as special guest of honor, President Bola Tinubu speaks eloquently of the memories of June 12 presidential election, recollecting the struggle for its revalidation. He also highlights some of the gains of the administration's economic policies, including gradual drop in inflation and a stabilized foreign exchange corridor.
Our democracy is not invincible, but it is alive. And this means our dream of a prosperous, happy nation is still within reach and worth fighting for. Mr. Chairman, Nigeria is at an inflection point, undergoing structural and fundamental change towards a secure future. Our administration is fully committed to boosting the economy and productive base through investment in critical infrastructure. Let's take this opportunity to thank the men and women of our armed forces for their bravery in service of the nation.
To the delight of many Nigerians, President Bola Tinubu not only recognizes the contributions and tribulations of some Nigerians in the aftermath of the annulment of June 12 election, he also confers honorary awards on a long list of deserving citizens, dead and alive.
It is right to honor those who have made sacrifices in the past, braving all odds and the guns to ensure we have a regime of democracy in our country. In this light, I announce the conferment of posthumous honors of CAFR on Kudirat Abiola, the heroine of our June 12 struggle. I also confer posthumous honor on Shehu Adra, GCFR, and Professor Humphrey Umwosu, CON.
Like Mr. Akpabio, Speaker, House of Representatives Abbas Tajuddin rails out the landmark achievements of the 10th House. He challenges Mr. President to take decisive interventions in the power sector as he seeks that Nigeria institutionalizes presidential address every June 12 before the National Assembly.
Mr. President, we express profound gratitude to you for conferring the national honor of GCON upon the office of the Speaker, following pleas by members, and for expanding the National Security Council to include the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. Both decisions affirm the principle of institutional partnership.
High point of the ceremony is the decoration of the 4 presiding officers of the National Assembly with national honorary awards. Now that President Bola Tinubu has cleared the air on alleged plots to turn Nigeria into a one-party state, lawmakers have challenged opposition political parties to put their houses in order and contribute towards strengthening the nation's democracy. Joke Adsa, TVC News, Abuja.
June 12, 1993, the day Moshood Abiola defied tyranny, declaring himself president at Ekpetedo in Lagos Island. Decades later, the site remains forgotten, with crumbling roofs, cracked wall, a haunting symbol of Nigeria's unfinished struggle for democracy. Senior reporter Ayomide Ajegbe was at Ekpetedo and now reports.
This is the soil of history. At this place, Moshood Kashimawo Abiola declared himself the president of Nigeria on June 12, 1993. Yes, that election was annulled, but it marks the significant prominence of democracy in Nigeria. And it is a reference point to what we enjoy now as democratic governance. What you would expect to be a monument of some sort is deserted on a day like this. A place like this should have been upgraded to an international world standard heritage where Nigerians can come together and pay their homage. But what we find here is appalling. The roofs have caved in. Miscreants have made this place their sort of refuge. And everywhere here does not look like what the hero of democracy would have wanted it to be. The third highest national honor was conferred on Moshood Kashimawo Abiola. And the statue here represents what it means to Nigeria and its history. On this day, June 12, is now being regarded as Democracy Day in Nigeria. Ayomide Ajegbe, TVC News, Lagos.
Let's go on a short break, and when we return, we'll get straight into our conversation for tonight. Please stay with us, everyone.
TVC News Weekend Lineup. TVC Breakfast Saturday with Kemi Fola Adeyemo and Emmanuel Ajayi. Political Standpoint with Precious Amayo. Newsweek with Mark Otabo. Politics and Sunday with Femi Akonde. Community Forum with Sarah Yeku. Get ready for the biggest stories, fresh perspectives, and burning news discussions that round up the weekend. Only on TVC News.
Experience information and entertainment like never before as TVC Breakfast takes your weekends to a whole new level. Introducing TVC Breakfast Weekend Edition, your ultimate source of thrilling sports updates, insightful political analysis, and captivating entertainment news. Stay in the know with what's trending, catch up with the latest in sports, and immerse yourself in the latest buzz from the world of music and movies. Your weekends are no longer just days off, but moments packed with knowledge, excitement, and enjoyment. TVC Breakfast Weekend Edition, only on TVC News.
Yashantawa was born on 17th October 1814 Bisiase, present-day Ghana. The daughter of Kwaku Ampoma and Atapo, her brother Afrani Panin became the chief of Edweso, a nearby community. After a childhood without incident, she cultivated crops on the land around Boankra. She entered a polygamous marriage with a man from Kumasi, with whom she had a daughter. She was appointed by her brother, Nana Akwasi Afrani Opese, ruler of Aduesu. When her brother died in 1894, Yashantiwa used her right as Queen Mother to nominate her own grandson as Ejisuhene, while the British exiled her grandson to the Seychelles in 1896. Along with the King of Ashanti Prempeh I and other members of the Ashanti government, Yashantiwa became the regent of the Ejisu Juaben district in the Ashanti Empire, now part of modern-day Ghana. After the exile of Prempeh I, the British Governor-General of the Gold Coast, demanded the golden stool, the symbol of the Ashanti nation. There was a disagreement among them.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, Nigeria marks 26 years of unbroken democracy. Earlier, President Bola Tinubu addressed the joint session of the National Assembly, really announced his achievements as well as debunking the claims that Nigeria is drifting toward a one-party state. But with all the gains recorded since 1999, what is the state of democracy in Nigeria? Tonight, let's get the perspective of author, playwright, human rights activist, and politician, Senator Shehu Sani, who joins me live from our Abuja studio. Good evening to you, Senator. Welcome to Politics Tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for joining us tonight, because this is a day where, we reflect with you on where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And coincidentally, it's a very happy day for you. Impressively also, over the years, you've answered a lot of questions about June 12 election, the struggle. What sparks your personal commitment to the democracy struggle? And basically, all those questions are shaped by your background as a civil rights activist, former senator, and participants in Nigeria's pro-democracy struggle. Earlier today, you were conferred with the national honor of Commander of the Order of the Niger, CON. Given the significance of this recognition, especially as it comes on June 12, how does it make you feel? How did you receive that recognition?
Well, first of all, not just for me, but for all those who made sacrifices in the struggle for restoration of democracy to our country and freeing our country from military rule in the 90s. It is a honor, and we highly appreciate Mr. President for this award. Taking cognizance to the fact that it's been 26 years since the return of democracy in Nigeria, and there have been about 3 to 4 presidents who were in charge of the country who ought to have done what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done. Specifically, even with my own cellmate whom were in the same prison, President Olusegun Obasanjo, and then Umar Musa Yar'Adua, who used to also visit us in prison, and then Buhari, whom people have fought and struggled and died for him to be president of Nigeria. You can excuse Jonathan for not being not knowledgeable perhaps in the struggle and also not part of it. But for other presidents, they were not able to do it, but he was able to do it. But all said and done, what is most important is that when we stood up to challenge military rule and to dislodge them from power and demanded the restoration of the mandate of MK Abiola, we did not do it for any form of recognition or awards. We were driven by conscience and the love for our country and the love for freedom and democracy. And that informed our reason for mobilizing people to resist military rule and restore democracy to our country. But for the fact that over 2 decades, a president has recognized and appreciated what we have done, it is pleasing to the fact that it's not about us, but it's also an inspiration for all Nigerians, especially younger ones, to stand up and defend democracy, defend freedom, and also defend the constitution of the country. When that happened, we were much younger, and many of us were student activists, others were civil rights activists, and we did it and went to jail for it. But the fact that now it has been recognized, and we are grateful for that.
And one thing Nigerians have said across board is that this is truly deserving. So congratulations once again, Senator. But what do you think the government still owes the memory of June 12 and its matters?
Well, you see, for the younger generation who don't know what June 12 means, and also for even the older generations who are not part of the struggle, well, let us go back to history of what actually happened. Chief M.K. Abiola won the June 12, 1993 elections, and it was annulled by General Ibrahim Babangida. And it was clear to the country that a section of the political class are in line with the annulment, and there are those also who are ready to fight for the mandates. But those of us in civil and human rights activism came to realization that if we don't do anything, then there is a tendency of this mandate simply going down the drain. Yeah. And at that very time, Chief M.K. Abiola was ready to fight, but many of his own members of his own political class were ready to work with the military. Mm. So that is how we stepped in. The Chief Gani Fahmi, the Femi Falana, the Bekoran Sankuti, the Balarabe Musa, Colonel Umar, and other activists, Wole Soyinka and co, even President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So if you look at if you categorize those who fought for the June 12, you can see them in section. There is the political class that set up the NADECO. There are the human rights activists that operated under Campaign for Democracy, Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, Civil Liberties Organization. There are the trade unionists that operated under NUPENG and a section of the labor, the academic staff union, university, and the media.
Absolutely.
Also made their own
Senator,
contribution.
I asked that question because 2 days ago, one of the wives of the late M.K. Abiola was in the program. And apart from the family feud she talked about, accusing one of the sons of greeds and the likes, in clear terms, she said the federal government has not done enough in honoring the struggle, memory and legacy of her husband, thereby calling on President Tinubu to do more. Now, these are her words. I'm here today to call on President Tinubu to carry the Abiola family along. Whatever the Abiola family has done, he should forgive us and help us. We need help. The women are living in penury. These were her exact words. But as someone who has followed the trail of events since 1993, what more can this government do?
Well, first of all, the sacrifices made by Chief M.K. Abiola was for Nigeria, for Nigerians and the future of our country. Today, the nation is reaping from the seed which he sowed, and also the nation was reaping from the sacrifices and the struggle which he triggered. Yeah. And whoever loves Chief M.K. Abiola should appreciate the fact that all he has nurtured, all he has struggled, today has come to fruition. It is not unusual if you have a very large family in an African setting. There will be issues when you are gone. It's not that unusual. But the fact that there is enough recognition made to M.K. Abiola, monuments were named after him, stadium was named after him, a day was dedicated for holiday for him, and he is recognized as one who has won the 1993 election. So as a Muslim, what he needs now is prayer for God to forgive him, to accept him, and grant him Al-Jannah Firdausi. That is what he needs. And if there is any support which the family needs, and I think it is within the prerogative of the president to do that, either publicly or in private. But the fact that Chief M.K. Abiola has been more recognized than any other Nigerian leader in history, even those who were once president of this country. So at least what has been done should be appreciated, and if there is need for more, the request should be done humbly and with respect, and also with due consultation with those who can intervene.
All right, Senator. So how would you compare the democracy you all fought for during June 12 to what we have today? What major setbacks or betrayals of democratic principles have you witnessed in the Fourth Republic?
Well, first of all, the appreciation of our democratic experiment since 1999 stems from the fact that for the first time in the history of our country, democracy has lasted to a quarter of a century. The First Republic lasted for 6 years. The Second Republic lasted for 4 years. The Third Republic was a miscarriage. And now we have 26 years of unbroken democracy. So that is itself, it's a success. And secondly, it is a very fact that Nigerians, for the first time in our history, we have a democratic system where people can freely express themselves and elect people into office, and the structures of democracy are there to hold people in the position of power and authority to account. That should also be appreciated. And for those who don't know, because I hear a lot of comments, some people will say that the democratic system is worse than a military regime, and many things are being said. Well, I can understand the frustration of people when it comes to the failure and challenges we face under a democracy. But it's a fact that no matter how things are bad today, it cannot give justification for the evil which we have suffered in the past. Those who have never lived under military rule, I can understand their own thinking, because almost 60% of Nigerians were born after 1999. So they never knew what is arrest and detention. They never knew prison. They never knew forcing people to exile. They never knew what it is to wake up in the morning and see military trucks outside of your... They never knew how you can disappear and never to be seen forever. So it's not unusual with Nigeria. Even in South Africa today, the generation that fought for the liberation of South Africa from apartheid colonialism are getting old. So the young people only read about oppression, exploitation, plunder, and repression as a history, not from personal experience. So it's not unusual. So within our democratic journey, there are challenges we faced: the insecurity, the killing, kidnappings, and agitation, secessionist agitation, and so many things that are associated with the price of freedom. So these are issues we need to address. And democracy is not an end. For the fact that we fought for democracy, democracy has been restored in the country. The next struggle is to make sure that our democracy is worth its value, worth its worth, and worth its essence, and makes impact in the lives of our people. So this is my own
Senator,
assessment.
And that would lead me to my next question, because you were part of the struggle that made June 12 possible. Historically, this was a day when Nigerians voted across ethnic and religious lines. How do you then reconcile that legacy with the deep divisions we see in the country today? I mean, looking at today's Nigeria, do you feel that struggle achieved the unity and democracy you fought for?
Well, to me, I believe that the spirit of June 12 was reenacted in 2023, when for the first time, when it was unthinkable after 1993 that you're going to have a Muslim president and a Muslim vice president, and the country is not at war, and everyone is at peace with himself. So that should be something that should be appreciated. Who knows that one day we'll wake up and have a Christian ticket in the position of leadership in the country, because a precedent has already been set. So I believe that in the history of every country, as you move on, you are bound to face storms, turbulence, challenges, and hurdles. And it is within those obstacles you face that you continue to strengthen your journey as a nation and as a people, and strengthen the structures and levers of the state for the betterment of our people. If you are going to ask me whether this was the democracy we fought for, I can say largely for the fact that Nigeria has been a democratic nation for 26 years. That should be appreciated. But there are challenges which we are facing today which ought to have been addressed 20, 15, or 25 years ago, since the coming of democracy, which was not. So I believe that we are reaching a point where our ethnicity, our sectionalism, our religious affiliation or identity will not matter in the form of leadership, because as time goes on, we will come to realization that it's only on the basis of electing competent and capable people in the position of power that the nation can be at peace and the nation can prosper. All these ethnic, religious, sectional identities has not been helpful to our country. And I believe that as we move on, we will be more conscious, more aware of this, and more of the need for us to emphasize on merit. All right,
Senator, we need to take a break. And when we come back, I'd like to get your perspective on whether successive governments have done enough to promote national unity. But let's take a break.
Information is power, information is security, information is knowledge. On Labor Lens, we believe that working people around the world have real questions of their own. They want to know how the world of work operates, what it means to the employer of labor, how policies affect workers in the workplace. On Labor Lens, I am sure we engage effectively the organized labor, organized private sector, and government to get out of them information workers are in need of. I am Sharon Ijason, asking questions that make you get sense of the workplace.
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Senator Shehu Sani, author, playwright, human rights activist, and politician, is my guest tonight. It is June 12, and the big question is 32 years after, what is the state of Nigeria's democracy? Senator, thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Earlier today, Mr. President was speaking to a joint session of the National Assembly, and some have called it the best Democracy Day speech since our return back to democracy since 1999. Now, the president urged Nigerians to embrace future challenges together and keep democracy alive for future generations. But in a country marked by division, what practical steps should follow this rallying call?
I beg your pardon again?
Senator, did you get that question? All right, so I said earlier today, Mr. President was speaking to a joint session of the National Assembly, and some have called it the best Democracy Day speech since our return back to democracy since 1999. The president urged Nigerians to embrace future challenges together and keep democracy alive for future generations. But I'm asking, in a country marked by division, what practical steps should follow this rallying call?
Well, first of all, I agree with the very fact that this is the best Democracy Day speech we had, not for anything, but for the fact that this was someone who came from the trenches and who was once a protest organizer, who was once a political prisoner, who was once a man who was forced into exile. So he knew the consequences of a nation that breaches freedom and democracy. So he knows the consequences of what military rule was all about. So he expressed that in his speech. But where do we move from here if we are to entrench our democracy? What is most important in this country is that we should reform our electoral laws so that we have a more transparent, credible, and free elections. Because it's only on the basis of electing people into position of power and authority through credible means that democracy has its own legitimacy. Secondly, Nigeria being a multicultural and multi-ethnic state, the need for us to operate governance of inclusion, of fairness and equity is very important. And the economic reforms that have been embarked upon need to be followed through so that this country will be sitting on a very strong foundation for this generation and the future generation. And most importantly is that we should have a system that is restructured, because it's clear to us that since 1999 all efforts to restructure the country has failed. So there should be that, in as much as we are seeing an economic restructuring. We should move to political restructuring in the interest of this country so that we can address some of this fundamental default of nationhood that is haunting us for a very long time. These are some steps which I believe we need to take to concretize all that has been said on paper.
Right, thank you, Senator, for going there. Because, I asked some of those questions this way because the belief is that Nigeria's democratic institutions today are a mix of progress and persistent challenges. And like I pointed out last night, yes, the country has seen improved frameworks for elections, a more assertive legislature, and what I called a growing civil society presence, but there are still challenges. And if time permits us, we'll focus on these issues in a bit. But if you could change one major decision Nigeria made on its democratic path, what would it be and why?
Well, to me, first of all, there is no country with a perfect democratic system. We can see before our very eyes. The U.S. president is sending National Guard to California in breach of the Constitution without the consent of the governor or mayor of Los Angeles or California, respectively. So we have also seen how court orders are violated even in the country that is called the bastion of democracy. And we have also seen challenges being faced by other advanced democratic nations in the Western world as far as the structure and the philosophical foundation of democracy, their democracy, is concerned. So for us as a people is to sit down and look at our constitution and look at the structure of the country and take the bold and courageous step of making the necessary adjustment and reforms that will now keep this country one, and that will be a country for all, and of which justice, equity, and fairness will be the guiding principle of the state. This, I believe, is necessary. We are having economic reforms. The next is political reform, which is very necessary in order for this country to continue to exist and to prosper into the next century and for the next generation that are coming. This is in brief what I can say about what needs to be done as far as our country is concerned. There's no country without challenges. There's no country without issues about their democracy. You can see what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Somalia. Even India and Pakistan, they have their own challenges as far as the constitution and their democracy is concerned.
Right, Senator,
so for us, it's to find our own solution to our problem, yes.
Right, I asked that question because you said all efforts to restructure the country has failed. So then what next? But moving on, part of what Mr. President did today was to formally honor the Ogoni 9. And Mr. President pledged to address historical grievances. How significant is this symbolic recognition coming nearly 30 years after their execution?
Well, you see, when you are trying to change any system, there must be sacrifices. And those in the position of power must be ready also to make sacrifices. For example, if you are talking about Nigeria should have a unicameral legislature, it means that either dissolving the Senate or dissolving the House of Reps. And those that will approve that will be the ones who are already in the seat. So will they be ready to make sacrifices and sacrifice their own seats for the country and for the future of our country? This is all that is needed. If we have 36 ministers or 46 ministers, well, now, can we have a nation where we can train governance to the size of our economy and for efficiency? Will some states be ready to accept the fact that they will not have ministers in their cabinet? These are all issues. Now we have 36 state structure as a country. And many states, almost 95 of the states are dependent on federal allocations. Will some of the states agree to merge with others? Merging will mean dissolving some political boundaries, political fiefdom, and political royalties that exist. Will they be ready to do that? So you see, political reforms comes with a price, and that those who are in charge should be ready to make sacrifices for themselves. And it requires a courageous leader to do that. For now, President Tinubu has been able to do that in the economic front, what leaders before him were not able to do. If this was done 20 years ago, we couldn't have been in this problem today. So where we are today is as a result of what we refused to do yesterday or what we did wrongly yesterday, and we are paying the price for it, and we are doing it at the late hour. But it says better late than never, because we still have a long way to go as a country and as a people.
All right, let's come back to you now, because I've been having this conversation for the past 3 days, and everyone agreed that MK Abiola's electoral victory championed the right to equality and non-discrimination. Say that was an electoral victory that showed that true democracy is about inclusion and respect for all identities. What role do civil society organizations and the media play in strengthening or weakening democratic institutions? Are these institutions adequately protected from political interference and intimidation?
Well, you see, if there is any breach of our democracy today, the first people who will pay the prices are men of conscience and conviction, because they will speak out. And that was the reason why in 1993, when I said earlier, when the election was annulled, the political class were not ready to fight, because many of them were not ready to go to jail or be shot at. That is where the civil rights activists and human rights activists and the human rights community came forward and became the avant-garde of the struggle for democracy. And in the northern part of Nigeria too, you can see how we spread the democracy, because the military then tried by all means to see how they can ethnicize or sectionalize the struggle. But we were able to move forward. I can remember Sani, the governor of Kaduna State today, was in the forefront when many of us were in jail, because they thought that by keeping many of us in jail, the struggle could have died. So where we are today as a country, the democracy we are today enjoying as a country was the product of struggle and sacrifice of some persons, just like you see in South Africa. And so to me, if we are going to sustain the gains of democracy, we must ensure that democracy makes meaning in the lives of our people. Because if people cannot feed, if people cannot pay their rents, if people cannot pay the school fees of their children, if people are insecure, they will start asking questions of what relevance is the whole democratic process.
Absolutely.
If you look at young people today, they have become darlings of military rule for the very fact that they had no experience of what life was under military rule, and they thought that civilian life, civilian government or democratic government is worse than the military. So you can't blame them for that. But the only way to win over them is to see how democracy make positive impacts in their lives. And this generation of leaders who are in position of power have benefited from the benevolence of Nigerian state. Many of them went to public primary school, public secondary school, public universities, and they benefited from scholarships. So that should be extended to new generation. By doing that, it makes them to love their country and appreciate democracy. But if the lives of people keep deteriorating, they will ask questions and they will continue to repudiate or rebuke democratic ideals and philosophies.
All right, Senator.
Continue to appreciate what they don't know.
Right. And if I'm to go back to the president's speech, the president publicly stated that we could not have won the battle against military dictatorship without the irrepressible journalists. And he went on to name key media organizations that were proscribed and silenced during that era. You marched alongside these journalists in opposing military rule. In your experience, how did their reporting and bravery influence the course of the June 12 struggle?
Well, this is the first time I said in the history of our return to democracy in Nigeria since 1999, when a president publicly acknowledges those institutions that stood in the defense of the ideals of freedom and democracy, specifically the media. You can remember how media houses were proscribed. The Tel magazine, the News magazine, Punch, Guardian, Concord, Daily Sketch, all these are, and to the point that many of them had to go underground. And Tel was publishing Deadline, and the News was publishing Tempo. That was the journey. From the time of military, over 41 media houses were closed down, and their journalists and editors were arrested and sent to prison. The Academic Staff Union of the University was proscribed. National Academic Union was proscribed. You can see the Nigeria Labour Congress was proscribed. Frank Kokori of Nupeng was arrested. You remember Milton Debibi and Warebi Agameni, and you can see the execution of Ken Sar. When Sario was executed, I happened to be in Port Harcourt prison when we were moved from Kirikiri prison to Port Harcourt, a letter taken to Aba prison in Abia State. Now, appreciating the role of the media is more or less as a booster to them to continue to hold the government accountable. And this is the first time a president, a sitting president, has really recognized the role the media play. Without the media, many of us could have simply been executed while in prison because they kept the touch, they kept us on the spotlight, and also kept those who were outside supporting them in the rallies, the civil disobedience campaign, the strikes action that were taking. It was the media that amplified, that strengthened, that reinforced that struggle, and recognizing and appreciating some of them who were in the front line, I think it is most commendable on the side of Mr. President. At least for the first time in history, we're having that.
But then, how can Nigeria better protect whistleblowers, journalists, and activists under democracy?
Well, you see, our generation that fought for democracy, and we have a new generation of young people now, also in the field of activism. They have better facilities. For example, under military rule, if we are to organize protests, we meet at night, we print leaflets, we go to the markets, the parks, the public gathering, and share it and come out. And we can be shot at, and we can also be arrested and sent to prison indefinitely or disappeared, never to be seen. But today, I've seen some of the protests being organized. You see them with laptops, with handsets, and they will even be live streaming it. Some of them will even be taking selfie with policemen. This is what happened. But we must appreciate that what happened at the NSAS was a reenactment of our struggle during the era of military rule. And you can still appreciate people like Shehu, who are still keeping the touch of the struggle and are still keeping that tradition. So wherever you have a government, you need protesters, you need people to strike. By that, you keep them awake, you keep them on their toes. And we cannot be activists yesterday or today and now be opposed to protest and opposed to strikes. But we want it to be done in a way that it's within the ambit of the law of our country and the one in which will not wreck the whole democratic process. So I really say that what the president has said he said it from an informed position. And you cannot have the mistake we did as activists actually in 1999 was for the fact that after we came out of prison, many of us came out from prolonged imprisonment, we refused to join the transition program. We never believed that the democracy would last, and then we were still on the Aluta stage, fighting Abdul Salam, attacking and criticizing him, while traditional politicians were organizing themselves into meetings. And the meeting we had before this democracy, on the eve of democracy, was that we were divided into two. Some said we shouldn't join the transition program. But Tinubu, at that time, when we had that meeting, he said if he doesn't join the transition program, then some people will take over power. Then many of us who refused to join, many years later, we started struggling trying to be elected into office, while already the professional politicians have entrenched themselves in seats. That's why you see today, many of those who fought for democracy, who were jailed, who were exiled, who suffered, are not holding position of authority or power because by the time they realized that they need to be in the political seat to effect change, already all the spaces have been occupied. So he happened to be the man who disagreed with us at that meeting, and today he has been proven right by history.
All right then. I'm talking about politics, Senator. The president used that opportunity to dismiss insinuations that his administration is pushing Nigeria toward a one-party state, insisting that the APC remains a political platform open to all Nigerians, including members of opposition parties. I mean, it was instructive hearing the president advising the opposition parties to put their houses in order, and that it is not his duty to do that for them. And I quote, "It's a pleasure to witness you in such disarray." For you, what exactly do you think leaders of these political parties should take away from that?
You see, the opposition parties in Nigeria are not losing relevance because of the external factors. It's because of the internal issue. So it's more of an implosion. Most of the parties that
implosion within their own parties, right? Being
in the forefront of playing the role of opposition are today be faced with crisis, whether it's Labour Party, it's PDP, it's NNPP. All these parties have internal crises. So, and it is ironic for the opposition to be expecting the president from a ruling party to now leave his seat and come and organize them so that they were able to fight him. So the problems of the Nigerian political opposition is the problem they ought to have solved within themselves. And nobody that is worth being called a man of conscience and conviction, a Democrat, will ever wish to have a one-party state. It is not feasible in Nigeria. Even though I hear people make a lot of examples about China, economic success of China, but they ignore the fact that China is a one-party state. So we are a democratic state, and a nation that is multicultural, multi-ethnic, and people from all different political tendencies and background. There is no alternative to a multi-party democracy. If we have one-party state, we're going to have a tyranny in this country, whoever is in the position of power. And it is for the opposition to stand up and resist that by organizing themselves and not searching for scapegoats in the person of Mr. President or the ruling party.
All right, Senator, let me quickly take you up on the viability of the opposition coalition. I know you're very familiar with the personalities and political strength of these politicians who are trying to come together to form this coalition. But do you see a situation where these men would be able to display a genuine commitment to putting the nation's needs above their own personal political aspirations?
Well, you see, I try to find a distinction, the philosophical distinction between the person in the person, president, and also the opposition leaders. First of all, the political battle in Nigeria is not between capitalists and communists. It's not between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. There is no political ideology as far as the political parties are concerned. Who are the top leading political opposition figures? Atiku and Peter Obi. And they subscribe to the neoliberal economic diktat. They are all fans of IMF and World Bank. They are also fans of neoliberal economic philosophy. And the same thing with Mr. President, with a progressive tinge. So there is no it's not a black and white situation. There is not a fact that if they're in power, they are going to do anything different. If you have a communist as an opposition, what you will see is that when he finds himself in a position of authority, he's going to nationalize the banks, nationalize the production sector, he's going to nationalize agriculture, he's going to transform the nation into a Marxist-Leninist state. That is not the case.
All right.
Everything that is being done today, they cannot do it differently. Their opposition simply is about not them being in office. But if you look at all their campaign manifesto, opposition A says it's going to remove subsidy, opposition B says it's going to remove subsidy, and now you have a president who also removes subsidy. So you can see how they operate in the same frequency, political frequency.
All right.
So to me, if this opposition will have to be an alternative, first of all, they have to solve their problems themselves. If they cannot solve the problems of their political party,
Senator.
So I wonder how
Let me come in quickly because of time. Right. Thank you for that, Senator. Let me come in quickly because of time. Before I let you go, what message would you give to the young Nigerians who see the vision and the trust as permanent features of our national life? What would you say to Nigerians who feel democracy has failed them even after June 12? In 30 seconds, sir, if you can.
Well, what I will say to the young Nigerians, first of all, is that they should defend democracy and they should hold people in the position of authority to account. And they should not wreck the country and they should not be used by politicians to pursue their own personal agenda.
All right.
And when it comes about the future of the country, it belongs to them.
All right, then.
So they should not be used as foot soldiers to wreck the country or to burn the country.
All right.
But they should do anything possible to strengthen our democracy and to make sure that those in the position of power are also kept on their toes.
All right.
In a way that does not undermine or wreck our constitution or our country.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Shehu Sani, author, playwright, human rights activist, and politician. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Your insights and your courage over the years. I mean, it's important to say that on this day, your voice continues to inspire a generation determined to keep Nigeria's democracy alive. And congratulations once again. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumo using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumo Olatunji. Good night and happy Democracy Day.
Maya Angelou was a civil rights activist, poet, and award-winning author known for her acclaimed 1969 memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and her numerous poetry and essay collections. Angelou was born on April 4, 1928 in St. Louis, Missouri. Angelou had a difficult childhood. Her parents split up when she was very young. Around the 1960s, Angelou lived in Ghana working as an editor and a freelance writer. Angelou also held a position at the University of Ghana for a time before she joined a community of revolutionist returnees exploring Pan-Africanism and became close with human rights activist and black nationalist leader Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. In 1961, Angelou appeared in an off-Broadway production of Jean Genet's The Blacks with James L. Jones, Lou Gossett Jr. and Cicely Tyson, and went on to earn a Tony Award nomination for her role in the play Look Away, 1973, and an Emmy Award nomination for her work on the television miniseries Roots, 1977, among other honors. Angelou's career has seen numerous accolades on TVC News.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Is one of the best ways through which a human being can give shape to their thought. It is the process of materializing one's thought, where imagination and thought starts to exist in a real world through art. Now, they are no more in your mind but in front of your eyes and can be seen by the rest of the world. I believe that every work of art is a personal experience of its creator. Welcome to the Art Express. I am Tolope Lamidi, your one and only host. Welcome back. Now, as part of efforts to challenge the way people react to waste and how it intersects with creativity, Lagos is set to join a global initiative with a launch of the Rethinking Rubbish initiative by Iluwalewa Gallery of Arts. Let's take a look.
My artwork is titled Beauty in Rubbish. You know, this piece I used a dark skin to represent, because dark skin is often not seen beautiful, and regarding the title of the exhibition, Rethinking Rubbish. So it's all about seeing beauty in what is considered not beautiful. So that's why I use a dark skin. Then I had to add some, like the bottle caps and all that, in order to align with the title, Rethinking Rubbish.
The title of my works are Wrapped in What Remains, and the second one is Regal Remains. They basically talk about a collection of memories from time to time, the memories that we've gathered, the events that we've experienced that must have forced into our being, into what we do as an artist. So the works are an inspiration gotten from my experience where I used to live in Bariga. So there's this thing we do when we burn trash. Yeah, and then there was something like that. I was just watching them, and then the old smell was like kind of like disturbing me. I had to go out and see what's going on, and then I realized that actually